Man, YUKI TSUKUMO is just something else. She really is special grade level and she is just a beast of a fighter. Especially after chapter 206, there is just more evidence for her being an absolute monster. But how would she fare against the heavenly restricted duo, Toji and Maki, two heavenly gifted fighters? And I actually asked you guys on a poll on my community tab. We had 1,400 votes and my god, it was an 86% landslide for Yuki winning this. And if you look through the comments, it was absolutely brutal, with a lot of people just blatantly bullying Maki and Toji. But there were some interesting comments and there were some interesting win cons for both characters. And that is what I'll be discussing today. The first part of the video, I'll be discussing how strong Yuki is. The second part, how strong Toji and Maki are. The third part, how the fight will go. And the fourth part is the conclusion. And if you like JJK content or Jujutsu Kaisen, it would be great if you could subscribe. If you like Jujutsu Kaisen, I have a ton on the channel, what ifs, discussions, live stream, and a ton more to come in the future. And also thank you to that guy Trey, or Trey by the way. As always, man, you're awesome. The only special grade member of the channel. Now to break down how strong Yuki is, I already did this in my Yuki versus Yuta video, so I'll be more brief of this, but we did learn some new information in chapter 206. So to just break down Yuki's curse technique, first of all, it is absolutely insane. She controls mass, or in some translations, imaginary mass, which is actually more accurate. She can modify her mass to be whatever she wants it to be, and she can also have it be virtual mass. So for example, she can make herself insanely heavy and this would not affect her speed whatsoever. And what imaginary mass means is she can pretty much give herself negative mass, or a number that shouldn't exist. So it really is a concept that in a sense warps even reality. Kind of crazy, and she definitely deserves the special grade title. And as we saw in chapter 205, it is insanely lethal. No one can actually block a punch from her. It is just so devastating, and she can actually apply this to her Shikigami, which she turned into a curse tool, Garyuda. So pretty much other than herself, she can also apply this curse technique, which is called Bombaye, or also Wrath of the Stars, whichever translation you prefer, onto this curse tool, or I guess Shikigami. And what we also learned is that she also has a domain expansion, and of course a simple domain since she taught one to Todo, but the simple domain is pointless because the domain expansion is just way better. And what's also likely is that she has some sort of high output technique or a final move or trump card that's insanely destructive that Kenjaku theorizes. And the new information that we learned from chapter 206 is that yes, she is a user of reverse curse technique, and I think that's pretty much it. We saw that she has insane endurance, she's very tenacious, and she is just an incredible fighter. But it seems like she got hoed badly by Tengen, where she had a plan of Tengen that involved her using a simple domain rather than domain expansion, but Tengen seems to have messed up. Things didn't go according to plan, and because of that she got smacked hard by Kenjaku's domain expansion guaranteed hit, which is just unfortunate because she could have avoided the attack, or she could have definitely not taken nearly that much damage had she used her own domain expansion. But because of Tengen, well, we're in the situation that we are in chapter 206. And we also know that she can heal herself and she can use reverse curse technique, but the reason she was choosing not to is because she needed to put pressure on Kenjaku and she didn't have time to heal herself because Kenjaku really just seems to be built different. Like seriously, this guy is just crazy. I mean, we all knew he was gonna beat Yuta or even Yuki in a 1v1, but man, he is just something above and beyond. But of course, what's happening to Yuki in this current chapter is not her fault. Tengen just messed up. But yes, that is Yuki. She has pretty much everything. She's an insanely good fighter with a curse technique that even defies concepts. Next, we have Toji and Maki. Now, of course, for a plethora of reasons, and which has been confirmed, they are equally as strong and have the exact same heavenly restriction. You could argue that Maki is right now in her prime and Toji wasn't, so Maki is stronger. You could argue that Toji has more experience because he had his heavenly restriction for longer and he's much older, so you could argue he's stronger. Regardless, the reality is they are very, very, very relative, to the point that they are pretty much just as strong as each other. Now, I actually go insanely in depth on my Kashimo versus the entire Zenin clan video. Yes, out of all videos, in that one I go very in depth on Maki and Toji, on both of their capabilities, so I would actually recommend that for more information, but I will be compressing a lot of information into a very short amount of time, so keep that in mind. So of course, the heavenly restriction makes them insanely powerful, it gives them insane physical strength, and it also just removes all of their cursed energy. So of course, when Maki actually had her true awakening, and also Toji in general, they're pretty much like invisible people when they go up against domain expansions because they truly have no cursed energy. They also have a plethora of curse tools. So of course, Toji having the most broken weapon in the entire series, the inverted spear of heaven, which just nullifies all and any curse techniques, even Gojo's. They have the special grade weapon, the playful cloud, which pretty much is based on the amount of strength that you have, so it's perfect for these because the stronger you are, the harder the weapon will hit. To the point that even pre-awakened Maki was able to send Haname flying. Granted, she didn't damage Haname or did very minimal damage, it's still kind of crazy. Or even when Todo used that exact weapon against Haname, it did really good damage. So if you imagine awakened Maki or Toji of this, yes, it's going to be absolutely brutal. So this is something they have separately. Each one of them has one of these. It's called a soul replica or a soul sword. Pretty much it just damages the soul directly. So it's something that should be able to kill immortals even, or people who can heal from things, because it directly damages the soul, to the point that it was even able to cut up the rainbow dragon skin, which is apparently supposed to be very hard, as Geto said, and it could even kill Naoya, who tried to heal from it, but unfortunately, because it damaged his soul, it just killed him. Though granted, it was right through his head and such, so that is also also a reason. One thing you should keep in mind is that while they have these weapons out, they would be visible in a domain, but while they aren't holding these weapons, they are completely invisible. So a good example is when Daido threw the weapon to Maki, she was completely invisible until she had grabbed onto the sword. When she had grabbed onto the sword, she was then visible. And obviously this would apply to Toji if he has the inverted spirit of heaven out. Of course, he can store them in his little curse worm that he carries, but keep in mind Maki doesn't have that. And even in Toji's case, if Yuki were to activate a domain expansion, it's not like Toji can just put all of it into his worm again in 0.2 seconds. He would still get caught in it. So situation and circumstances do matter in this fight. And of course, to break down the insanely broken ability of their heavenly restriction, it's that they have the ability to see things that others can't see. So not only can they see the soul, which is absolutely crazy, but they can also see things such as different temperatures in the air, density in the air, and a whole bunch of other crazy things which we can't even comprehend. This goes so deep that even though they have no cursed energy, they can physically see curses. No glasses or anything needed. They can physically see, talk to, hear, and touch curses, which keep in mind is crazy because they're not actually seeing it. It's just that all of their other senses are so enhanced that they can see it. I hope that makes sense. It's just absolutely insane how that works. But another great thing of this ability is that they can also grab onto the air, so they can dodge things very well, and they can also move in ways that are supernatural and even movements that should be impossible even in JJK. One example is how Maki can literally dodge and move in the air casually by grabbing the air or grabbing things in between the air, you know what I mean. Or how Toji bent his body in a way that shouldn't even be possible to dodge Gojo's blue. Yes, reread that hidden inventory fight. Toji actually grabs the air and dodges the blue and also moves in many ways which even Gojo says this shouldn't be possible. We now know that was because of him grabbing the air or the temperature in the air or the density or whatever it is. I'll just say grabbing the air for the rest of the video. And that's pretty much how strong they are. In terms of trying to scale them, I think it's pretty obvious that both Toji and Maki are easily weaker than pre-awakened Gojo. Again, if you want a far more in-depth reason for this, I would recommend the Kashimo vs the Zenin clan video. At least for a portion of that video, I talk about why that's the case, but I will briefly run it down now. So pretty much, Toji was scared shitless of pre-awakened Gojo, and he had to set up multi-day plans with multi-layers and an insane number of advantages and an insane number of prep to basically beat this Gojo, because he knew he could not beat him if he just faced him with no prep. So for example, basically he set the bounty on Rico so that Gojo would be using his curse technique for multiple days. Keep in mind, multiple days, no sleep, no rest, constantly using his technique to the point that it's almost frying his brain even. And at this point, he had no reverse curse technique, so the current Gojo can actually do this infinitely because he's always healing his brain with reverse curse technique. This version didn't. And of course, this translated into immense fatigue, physically and mentally. So in case you didn't know, even before the fight starts and during the whole fight, Gojo is sweating profusely because he's already on the brink of collapse before the fight even starts, because he's already been pushed to his limits, again, mentally and physically. So that's one reason. Another reason is he literally starts the fight off by stabbing him in the back. Yes, Gojo said it's not a serious wound and that he'll be fine by reinforcing it, but because he didn't have reverse curse technique at this time, that wound stayed. It's not like he'd healed the wound. Yes, he reinforced it, but he still has that damage, and he still has to focus on that on top of everything else. And other reasons go into Toji having full access to all of Gojo's abilities at this time, so he was prepped to take them all on. And on top of all of this, he also had a deliberate plan to basically trick Gojo with fly heads to disrupt his vision and also make him think that Toji was going for Rico. Because remember, while all this was going on, Gojo's main goal was to protect Rico. So when he thought that Toji had gone after Rico, he'd actually let his guard down and turned his back again for Toji to come in and finally, after this multi-day plan with 10 different preparations, all of this just to catch him off guard, just to use the one weapon in the entire series that can counter Gojo and catch him off guard, the inverted spirit of heaven. All of that just to fight a pre-awakened Gojo, because he knew he would have got his shit rocked and his world stomped had he taken on pre-awakened Gojo. Beside the fact that I just gave a plethora and list of factual evidence on why Toji is not stronger than pre-awakened Gojo, there's also the fact that even Toji himself said that there is no way he's ever going to catch this guy off guard. The only way is to do all of these things and just sneak attack him from behind with a weapon that counters it. Again, all prepped just for pre-awakened Gojo. And against someone like Geto, he needed no prep, he needed nothing. He was just literally playing around, playing with him very easily, and he just defeated him easily with no planning or anything. Had he truly been stronger than pre-awakened Gojo, he would have just done that. And again, all of this applies to Maki. I know it's crazy because people think pre-awakened Gojo isn't that strong because the one fight he has, he loses to Toji, and of course because pre-awakened Gojo doesn't have the red glow, hollow purple, domain expansion, reverse curse technique, long distance teleportation. He doesn't have a lot of things, oh, and a bunch of experience, and saying he's still stronger than Toji is crazy. But yes, Gojo is just that guy. He's just that broke. Now again, the reason I say that is not to underrate Toji or even Maki. They're both insanely powerful. I class them both as special grade combatants. I just say that to bring them down to reality, but there are actually people who think that Toji or Maki could beat Gojo right now or something crazy. And again, for sure, they are not underrated. They have insane speeds, insane strength, and they have just broken weapons which are really going to help. And most importantly, they actually are just immune to domain expansions, which is a very, very important factor. Now to actually break down how this fight would go. Again, if you like JJK content or if you're enjoying the video so far, please do be sure to subscribe. It would be much appreciated, and you'll be seeing a lot of JJK content in the future. But this seems to be going one of two ways. Obviously, from all the comments, which hopefully I showed in the beginning, or perhaps I'm showing now, or you can just check out the community tab yourself, all the comments blatantly say Yuki is far stronger. I mean, we had 1,400 votes and Yuki just won overwhelmingly. However, there were some interesting comments to give Toji and Maki some win conditions. Now, before I go into their win conditions, I'm just going to start off with why Yuki is more likely to win this. If a Mark III attack from Naoya did that much damage to Maki that she was out of the fight and needed to actually heal, which keep in mind, yes, Toji and Maki can heal, but it's nothing compared to the reverse curse technique. I'll bring this up now because I actually forgot to do it in Maki and Toji section. If you just give them 5 minutes, they can actually even heal internal damage that's serious, as well as wounds on the outside. Of course, they can't heal anything life-threatening or heal limbs, as Toji wouldn't have died to the hollow purple then, but they can heal serious damage given 5-10 minutes. But in a fight like this, they're not gonna have that time, so it really is pointless to say. It's not like reverse curse technique where it's instantaneous. This just takes too long. This is something that can only be used in group fights. But again, back to the main point. One punch from Yuki, which snapped Kenjaku's arm in half and just sent him flying across the entire Star Plasma vessel, across that insanely complicated barrier, and just broke through it actually. I would put my money on that this would seriously damage Toji and Maki to the point that they would have internal wounds. It might even snap their arms off. I'm being dead serious. It's crazy how physically strong this is. This punch, or Yuki's technique, is far stronger than Naoya's Mark III here. So anything less of them getting seriously damaged and injured from this is just a lot of copium, honestly. She has a Shikigami too, which is just so insanely heavy, and as we saw in chapter 206, has so many applications as it can even trap the opponent in heavy mass. It is just crazy. And now keep in mind, I know after 206 you might be underestimating Yuki a bit, but remember the reason she's on death's door is because Tengen had messed up, and had she used her own domain expansion, she would not be in this situation, as Kenjaku says himself. So of course, Yuki just has an overwhelming favor. She's stronger. She might be faster. You could argue the speed goes either way, but she is just far stronger. And also her Shikigami is just so useful and has so much utility. And this is on top of the fact that she probably has some hidden technique that we haven't even seen. So that's why, let's be real, Yuki takes this a lot of times, and if you just go through the comments, the vast majority of people agree. But now let's get into Toji and Maki's win conditions, because that's something that's really interesting and something, you know, it's pretty fun. We like to have things more fair and even, right? Not to just have a one-sided video. One thing I'll just say now, the inverted spear of heaven will kill Yuki. I don't care how heavy she is, what mass she has, that inverted spear of heaven is cutting through her and killing her. The reason I say this is because the inverted spear of heaven just forcefully turns off curse techniques. It doesn't matter what mass she makes or how strong her curse technique makes her, it will be forcefully turned off by this inverted spear of heaven. Because listen, if it could turn off Gojo's neutral or his limitless, which keep in mind is something that works on a subatomic level and has a literal infinity between him and his opponents, and it went through that infinity because it turned it off, yes, it's going to kill Yuki and go through it. Now of course the issue is, I really don't think Yuki is just going to let herself get hit by this, because clearly the inverted spear of heaven is a curse tool, so much so that Toji didn't even want Gojo to see it until the very end when he can sneak up on him. And because of that, I do think Yuki will be trying to avoid this weapon, because even if it wasn't the inverted spear of heaven and just a regular curse tool, which maybe she doesn't know what it does, she's not going to let it cut her even if she can heal herself, because as we've seen with many fighters, if there is a curse tool, you do not let it hit you even if you can heal yourself, as we saw with Yuta twice even, because you don't know what technique that could have, or you don't know what conditions that might fulfill, or what type of damage it could do. It might even do something that you can't heal. So that's actually why the most experienced sorcerers, and Yuki is insanely experienced, far more than Yuta, is definitely going to be wary of that weapon. So that's why a lot of the comments were saying this is going to be who can hit the other first. So if Toji or Maki can hit Yuki first with the inverted spear of heaven, or potentially even with the soul replica weapon that can damage the soul, then yes, they would just kill her. The issue I have with that is Yuki's just not going to let that happen, and she also has a Shikigami helping her, which is also insanely heavy, so it can help in defense and offense as it can trap your opponent. Of course, one of the issues of this is when Yuki activates her domain expansion, it's not like Daido or someone is going to be there to hide the weapon for her until she sneaks up behind Yuki. The issue is if they're holding their weapons, or if they have their weapons out and Yuki casts it very fast, like 0.2 seconds, which I have no doubt she can do, then Toji and Maki are going to be seen by the domain. But one thing that they can do is that they can let go of the weapon, and then they'll become invisible again. So in that case, they can just come up from behind and just punch her in the head or something, I don't know. And now my laptop died and I don't even know exactly where I stopped the recording, so I may have missed out 2-3 minutes of whole recording, but let me continue on my phone while I have this room booked. Anyway, to continue. So that's why I just have Yuki taking this in a fight. She doesn't need her domain expansion, she's just going to be pretty much beating the shit out of them in a 1v1, because she will have Garyuda. It'll be a 2v1, and Garyuda can be used offensively and defensively very well, so there is that. However, I don't want to slam on Toji and Maki too much, because again, they do have their win condition, but the thing is, in a regular fight, I just don't see them winning this, even with all these broken weapons. What I will say is if you give either of them some form of prep time, perhaps if you give them a bit of information on Yuki's technique, or if you just give them time to prepare for a special grade level fighter, then yes, perhaps they could win. That is actually a pretty good win condition. So that would be more of an assassination, and it would be pretty unfair because we're giving a lot of prep time and favorability towards these characters. But to be honest, that is the only way I see them winning this, in some form of assassination. But again, these two are by no means seems weak. If this was a 2v1 with both of these guys taking on Yuki, I am not too confident on Yuki winning that, even though Yuki is stronger than them individually. When you have two heavily restricted demonic monsters with broken weapons, even with how strong Yuki is, I do imagine that might be too overwhelming, and it does get more complicated when you bring in two fights against Yuki, but that's a whole different discussion. This is more of a 1v1 discussion. That's the point of this video. And yes, I just think Yuki takes this. And now for the conclusion. Of course, it was an overwhelming favorite. We had 1,400 votes in the community poll, and just all the comments roasting Toji and Maki to an absolute crisp, and rightfully so. So it was an 86% landslide win for Yuki. It is what it is. Of course, Maki and Toji have their win condition, so that does exist. They have some incredibly broken weapons, and like some of the comments said in the community tab, if they can just land a hit, that could be the end of Yuki, isn't it? Which I imagine in a regular fight might not happen unless they're prepared, or they have some information on Yuki's curse technique. So again, if it's an assassination, I do think it can actually be pulled off. So that win condition does exist. But that's pretty much all there is to it. What do you guys think about how this fight would go? Was there anything I forgot? Because I did look through the plethora, and I think it was around 60 comments or something, all discussing the win conditions for both parties. So I do think I covered everything that could have been covered, but let me know how you think this fight would go. Do you think Yuki takes this, or do you think Toji and Maki could take this in a 1v1? Let me know in the comments down below. And of course, if you enjoyed the video, be sure to subscribe for more Jujutsu Kaisen content just like this. I have a ton of what ifs or versus battles just like this on the channel. I recently did a Yuki versus Yuta one, which did really well, so if you like this video, you're gonna love that one. Check that out. I do a whole bunch of stuff like what ifs, discussions, theories, and live streams, and the whole bunch. So yeah, if you like Jujutsu Kaisen, be sure to subscribe, and also leave a like if you like the video, as that helps the video out a lot, and I would really appreciate it, because there are going to be a good amount of dislikes because people always get upset in these versus battles. So thank you. And of course, thank you to all the members of the channel. You guys are just insanely clutch. Thank you. Truly, I mean it a lot. You guys make these things possible. Much love, guys. All your names on the screen, you're all legends. But yes, if you've made it this far, you're a member of the Higuruma fan club. Thank you and welcome. Let me know you made it this far by telling me you're a member of the Higuruma fan club in the comments. And lastly, I'm sorry that I had to switch to my phone at the end. I hope no important information was cut from my recording, but I don't think so. And I hope the iPhone audio sounds good. Probably not as good as my expensive microphone one, but it is what it is. But hey, with that, have a nice day and take care, everyone. Peace.